Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to episode 2 of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. Episode 1 ended off quite surprisingly. Like most of the episode for the first one was kind of by the numbers, what you expect. If you've watched the movie or I guess read the comics, it was kind of going in line with things and changing things a little bit. I found out that the part that it shows Gideon and Matthew plotting prior to Matthew's arrival in during the concert, that part wasn't in the comics. And I found this out because I watched a reaction from a YouTuber who, you know, has read the comics and is very familiar with them. Like, not only just read them like once or twice or whatnot, but has read them many times and is a big fan of them and has seen the movie, of course, as well. And in it, yeah, he was surprised by that and brought up that that didn't happen in the comics. And I think that's cool. But he also made it clear that something else was original for this series, and that piqued my piqued that piqued my interest, and that is the ending. Scott seemingly losing to Matthew is new. Is something that did not happen in the original comics. And it didn't happen in the movie either. So what gives? I don't know what the explanation is. Because obviously in this world with these rules, however it works, when you kind of explode into coins, that is you being defeated in combat. So by all accounts, what we can tell, Scott was defeated. Now, like I said, I haven't read the comics, but I've seen the movie, and it's not 100% clear if them exploding into coins is supposed to be death or not. Like, there's a couple characters. I'm not going to get into details for anyone who might not like have seen the movie or anything. Sorry if I accidentally say a spoiler once or twice. I'm not trying to, but something might slip out. I think there's one or two things that happened with in the first episode reaction, but I'm going to try not to spoil things for those who might be experiencing this for the first time with this series. But I'll just say there is a character specifically I'm thinking of who, the way he is defeated makes it seem like he would have possibly died. But nothing is ever confirmed. There's a lot of other characters who when they're defeated, it's like that's not death, you know? It's like they wouldn't be killed there. They're just defeated, but they still explode into coins and are never seen from again. So it was never really made clear if it was supposed to be like a death thing. I honestly never really saw it that way because, again, except for the one character, um, it doesn't really come across that way. It just comes across like a a player character beating the boss of a video game, which obviously is inspiration for a lot of this. So when you beat the boss of a video game, you don't see that boss again unless the video game has the bosses come back for some reason. Usually, a lot of times, especially in the games that this kind of series is in tune with, usually the boss disappears or um, falls down something or whatnot. Depends on the game. But you never see them again. So it's just it's not necessarily death. And the fact that this seemingly happened to Scott, I feel is proof of this. And I feel might be leading into maybe delving into that a little more. Um, Maybe this series is gonna like dive into the idea of like what is happening there, like why the characters explode into coins, but more importantly, what happens to them afterwards. I'm very curious about that. Um, what they're gonna do here, because again, apparently, by the way, this other reactor reacted to that and made it clear that this wasn't in the comics. This is new territory. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with this series taking things in ways that neither the comics nor the movie did. It's a different adaptation and it's allowed to make different choices. Remember, this is still being helmed not only by Edgar Wright, who made the movie, but also by, if I get the name wrong, I apologize. I believe it's Brian Lee O'Malley, the creator of the comics. Like, the actual creator of Scott Pilgrim is working on this series actively. So, if there's any like notable changes, it's not only creator approved, but creator inspired. Like, he had direct hand in all of this. So it's like complaining about it makes no sense. And I know people have been complaining about it. I've been trying to avoid things for people who, binge shit. Um, but I know people have been complaining about it. I just have been avoiding looking at details because they might go into further episode stuff. In fact, I pretty much guarantee they probably do. Um, but I know for a fact they complained about what happened at the end of the first episode. That I do know. And it's just wild to me because it's like, again, it's like people complaining about changes made to like the One Piece LA, the One Piece live action, because it's like Eiichiro Oda had direct involvement in the making of that series. All changes were approved by him, were sanctioned by him. Some were probably even thought of by him. And you're going to try and say this isn't his vision? Like, how conceited can you get to try and say something that is literally creator approved is not the vision of the creator? Um, it's the same thing here. So I think that no matter what we're going to get is going to work. Because the creator is working on this and obviously wants to make this as good as possible. Excuse me. Um, but I'm interested to see what other changes are made and how things continue to go. There's a lot that I'm still looking forward to with this, so let's just get into it. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So this episode really tried to hammer in for pretty much the entire runtime the idea that Scott was dead. And I didn't buy into it at all, because obviously not. And at the very end, Ramona realizes that, yeah, he's alive. But it really tries to hammer that in. So it is kind of playing with the idea that bursting into coins is death. Which again, it never really gave me that feeling when I watched the movie. Any of the times I've watched it, I've watched it a lot by this point, but it never really gave me that feeling that it was supposed to represent death. None of the characters ever reacted like it was supposed to. You know? They never reacted to it like it was supposed to be the characters were dying. There's only one exception, and again, in case things go into that at all, I'm not going to mention who it was. Because I don't know what they're doing at this point. Because this episode, I think, was entirely new content. Again, I don't know how the comic went, but based on Mikey Venture's reactions to the end of episode 1, I'm thinking this was probably all new. Like, I'm thinking this was probably not in the comic. Because everything that happened in this episode was directly connected to the big twist at the end of episode 1, Scott's defeat. Everything was directly connected to that. The only way that works, the only way that makes sense is if it's new content. Because the twist was new content. So I'm thinking that this series is taking a very different turn. Like, is actually completely flipping the script. Which I'm fine with. Like I said, I'm fine with changes being made from the source material, as long as it still captures the same spirit of the original, while still telling a great story. By having this be new and fresh, yet still having the same cast from the Edgar Wright movie, it allows the voice actors especially to not just do the same thing again, but to expand upon their characters and roles. Already in this episode, we see a lot expanded on with Matthew Patel. He's the first Evil X. In the movie, and probably the comic, not much time is given to him. He pretty much bursts in at the show, fights Scott, is defeated, and then he's done. That's it. You have the backstory about him and Ramona dating in middle school, but that's it. There's not much to him. Because he's only the first Evil X. He's not that big of a deal, all things considered. And so, having him be expanded on, but also having him defeat Gideon and usurp the League of Evil X's is infinitely fascinating. It takes things in a new direction. We get to see his powers expanded upon. This is clearly going to expand his character a lot more. And the fact that everyone else in the league is kind of following him, it's just like, this is so actively fascinating. Gideon has lost everything. And we only see, again, it's not really a spoiler to say that Gideon is the final boss in the movie, and more than likely the comic as well, because he's the leader of the League of Evil X's. He's the final boss that they have to face. So he has everything. He has it all until the very end, when he's defeated by Scott. So this is very different. For him to lose everything to Matthew like this is just insanely wild. And it really makes me curious as to what's going to happen next. Now, on top of just the wonderful references that they have in here, this episode, despite having a little bit of a sad note to it because of Scott's quote unquote death, um, there was some stuff that was exceptionally funny in this episode. That it's like, I almost burst out laughing too. Like, I had to hold myself back from laughing a lot harder. The coins in the casket, like, oh my god, that's so stupid. That is so stupid, but really fucking funny. And the song Envy Adams chose to sing at the funeral, it's like, oh my god, that is the perfect, stupid ass song to sing there. It's like, that's the song like you hear in all the sad commercials and stuff, and it's like, it feels so disingenuous, which is perfect for Envy Adams. And it's just like, oh my god, that's so funny. Um, and then there's just some of the lines, some of the references. They reference Dead Poets Society with "Oh Captain, My Captain." They reference TLC's "Waterfalls," the song, uh, with "Don't go, uh, stick to the streams and the rivers you used," whatever the exact line was. Um, I mentioned it in the reaction, obviously. Um, and then there's like just really funny lines as too, like Gideon is like at two Roxy, and she's at two eat me, and it's like, oh my god, that's fucking hilarious. Um, that was just genuinely a really good comeback, and it's like, oh my god, like this is intense and strange and kind of sad, and yet they're still integrating this comedy in, and it doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. It feels just like it fits this world because it's absolutely absurd. Everything about this world is absurd. The fact that you could get punched into exploding into coins and that equals death is wild. The fact that a celebrity pop star crashes a wedding, turns it into a pop concert, and gets everybody to leave following her is absurd. The fact that Knives, the person who is, let's be honest, mourning Scott the most outside of Ramona, just completely flips the instant she sees Envy Adams is absurd. But it works for this world. Again, you have to take into account the world that we're in here. If you try to compare this to other shows or to reality, you're probably just going to confuse yourself. Because it's like, you're not supposed to look at this as like, oh, this is unrealistic. Uh, I'm gonna, you know what? Fuck it. I'm calling out my sister here. I showed the first episode to my sister because she had seen the movie a long time ago. And she didn't like it. And her main complaint seemed to be that Ramona and Scott's relationship was unrealistic. Like, that was the big thing she was, like, annoyed by. Um, and it seemed to be focused mainly on how quick it moved along. And it's like, when she's saying that kind of thing, it's like my brain is trying to process. It's like, you're going into this hoping for realism? It's just, it's not computing to me because it's like, it's not meant to be like that. Scott Pilgrim is a send up to video games. It is a send up to comics and nerd culture. It's meant to be over the top. It's meant to be silly and absurd. It's meant to be like ridiculously goofy. I got something in my eye. Ugh. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's not meant to be like realistic in terms of how characters and certain situations and all are portrayed. But also, that's not even entirely accurate anyway, because it's like, could you say Ramona and Scott's relationship moved very quickly? Yes. But that's not always unrealistic. Sometimes people just click really quickly. Amazon delivers some packages. She'll shop in a second here. Sometimes people click really quickly. They connect, and like is shown in the first episode, sparks fly. It's just that easy sometimes. I wish it were that easy for me. Like, I'm jealous, but I've known people who have gone through that in real life. People who meet and literally the same day just like fall in love with each other. Or at the very least, become romantically interested. Because you can kind of say that like, love doesn't happen that quickly, not like real love. And yeah, fair enough. But I would not say that Ramona and Scott's relationship there was real love yet. Like, they became infatuated with each other. They became interested in each other because of what their own lives were. Scott is very clearly a character dependent on others. He has a hard time having any level of self-respect. And because of this, he gets way too over-attached to other people really easily. While Ramona, she has 7 evil exes. 7. She's like 23 years old. And she has dated 7 different people before Scott. That's insane, honestly. And the thing is, all of them ended up being a bad match for her. She's vulnerable. And suddenly this nice guy comes along who, while not exactly the most healthy of a relationship, treats her very kindly and asks her on a date. It's like he's not trying to be over the top or anything. He's not trying to like have all this flourish, all this grand gestures. He's just being himself. And so she grasps onto that, trying to latch onto something that's going to, make her feel better. That she's going to be able to connect to. It's like this relationship is built on 2 vulnerable people trying to find comfort in each other. And it's not the most healthy. And again, I'm not going to go into spoilers because that might be covered to some degree here. But that is gone into in the movie. Their relationship is not like some fairy tale romance. It's actually very unhealthy at first. And they have to work through that. That's a notable part of the story. And again, things are obviously being changed drastically here. But the point still stands. And then you might be asking, oh, then why was she mourning Scott so much if it wasn't like real love at this point or anything. Because a person just seemingly died in front of her. Someone who was very nice to her, someone who she, even if it wasn't like real love, did care for. And not to mention, she does blame herself. Even if it's not her fault, um, even if Knives' blame for her was a little ridiculous, she does definitely blame herself. There's this League of Evil Exes she finds out about are basically trying to get back with her by defeating anyone who she tries to date from now on. These these negative, toxic parts of her past haunting her to this day. And she just believes that because of that, because of her, someone just died. Yeah, she's going to be in mourning. She's going to be fucked up about that. It's like, there's a lot about this series that, of course, is going to be unrealistic. I mean, it's fucking anime. But there's also a lot about it that delves into very realistic emotions, very realistic character work. And it brings new levels of depth by having this story be clearly so different that I don't even know how this is going to go. It's probably going to develop a lot of the characters that, at least in the movie and probably the comics, well, maybe the comics went into them a lot more. I don't know, but at least in the movie, didn't get a huge amount of development, like the rest of the members of Sex Bomb, or just the evil exes. If they're going to do this with like Matthew Patel, they're probably going to do it with the rest of them too. I mean, the Katayanagi twins spoke. They didn't do that in the movie. They played some music on their DJ table, and that's pretty much it in during a battle of the band situation. I don't believe they said a single word in the movie. So there's already more to them here. You actually get to see their personality. You get to see they built a robot and they gendered him and he's their precious little boy. That's 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 I love that. Like that's adorable. And it's like it's so interesting what they're doing with this. And I'm genuinely invested. This doesn't replace the comics or the movie. If you end up watching through this and you do believe the comics or the movie or whatever are better still, that's fine. This doesn't like stop those pieces of media from existing. If you don't end up enjoying this, that's fine. You don't have to. It's all subjective. But give it a shot. I tried to combine shot and chance there, and it's like give it a chance. It's like what? No, give it a shot. At least try to understand what it's doing. If you still don't like it, you still don't like it. That's perfectly fine. But just just give it a chance to see what it's doing. And I'm excited for what's to come. I think this is going to be great. These first two episodes were both fantastic. The first episode with a lot of the specific like comparisons to the movie and the comic, shots directly taken from them and everything. And this one being completely anime original. It's like, do this shit. Have a mix of both. Change things up. Do your own thing. It's such a smart idea to have this be separate and not just a one-to-one adaptation, but still carry on the exact same spirit. This still feels like Scott Pilgrim. So I'm into it. I'm very into it. And I'm very excited to see where this goes now that Matthew is the leader of the League of Evil Exes. What is this going to mean for Ramona? What is this going to mean for Scott now that we know he's still alive? What are we going to explore characters like young Neil more, or Wallace, or the rest of Sex Bomb? A lot of questions, honestly, and I'm very interested to see what they do. So, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off? The title of which kind of makes a lot of sense now. I was kind of wondering what the title was like in specific reference to, and yeah, he kind of took off. He's clearly not dead. I mean, we know that now, but why and how did he just take off like that then? Questions to be answered. Um, so yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. Like I said, let me know your thoughts down below. No spoilers, not just for me, but for everyone who might be watching along with me and have not read the comics or seen the live action movie. Just be courteous of others. Don't spoil things. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this episode and maybe even talk about the first episode again. But for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.